Hi there. It's time to look at the three crypto originals, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Bitcoin Cash again. So if you're new to my sessions, as usual, I'll cover the Wyckoff stage, potential price trend change, as well as key price levels. These are education content only, no financial advice. And if you haven't subscribed to the Substack yet, is the handle Asset Lens on the top right-hand corner. The crypto dashboards, as well as the macro dashboards, will be available for free until April. So take the chance to help yourself understand better. Basically, the dashboard will show you how the asset is performing, where it is at, with quite rich information to help you to understand the market better. There are two dashboards, one for crypto specifically and one for broader market. So hope that helps you. Let's go back to the charts. For Bitcoin, here we are seeing an interesting week. There's still about 33 hours left. This week, it tried to go above the 74K that I shared for many sessions already, that this 74K is a very solid resistance. The reason being the reaccumulation period over here. From 74K down to somewhere about 50K was when, during 2024, right before the market climbed to the all-time highs, one after another, that reaccumulation zone, it's where the price is playing around just now. Okay, so that's point one. The other point is, look at this. You can call that a bear flag. This one may as well be the next one. Irrespective of whether you are into candlestick pattern analysis, for me, those patterns may not always hold true. So I will take it with a grain of salt, but you always hear, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I showed to many members as well as audience that has been following me for quite a while. We had this very first, you can call that the relief rally. And then the second period where it kind of stayed flat or tried to test the earlier resistance or support. That was during 2022, okay, before the price got into the accumulation cycle for Bitcoin. Remember these two periods, okay? That's the first period. Now we have the second. And given what has happened last week, this sign of weakness is confirmed. This LPSY, let's say, is 80-90% confirmed as well. I'll keep the question mark here just for another 2 weeks, because if the price continues to go up along this channel, okay, when we get to the daily chart, we'll be able to see a little bit more detail. Then the LPSY would move a little bit higher. But again, the two key levels to pay attention to still 74K, very strong, as you can see, as well as it was the bottom for the sign of weakness back in March 2025 as well. So after that is the ETK, 80,500 level. Okay, the light blue key level and the blue key level. Those two are the levels if the price continues to move upwards. The hope is not only about whether the Middle East war is going to finish. That's one key factor. The other that comes in will be Fed, which the new Fed chair will come in May. So the next few weeks may pretty much range bound unless in the very last month of duty, Jerome Powell is going to announce something very crazy. Not sure whether that would happen because of the war that's happening in the Middle East and oil price staying high. It's to anybody's guess. Okay, so that's the macro perspective. Now, if it comes down, okay, if it still gets rejected and falls through this support, obviously Currently, the support of this upward channel is around 68K, the green key level. Okay, you see if it comes down, the very first support line is there. And basically, it has to fall through the channel bottom in order to touch the 63K line. So unless all of a sudden, as in the case of sell-off in gold and silver, people start to cash out from whatever asset that has basically surged in price. It could be the big whales, or it could be the small fishes as well, once they see the big whales are offloading. Okay, so that's when the stock market, gold, silver, as well as Bitcoin or some other cryptos starts to see cashing out scenario. Until the point, it wouldn't take long, probably, depending on how the stock market reacts, right? If it is like a short-term pain, then that's the beginning of accumulation. And the big guys will then actually, when the price drop, when people panic sell, that's when they got in, like this period, okay? Right before or at the very beginning of accumulation, that's when the whales started to buy, when people are panic selling, okay? So I mentioned there is a slight chance that it is the case for Bitcoin, but looking at what's happening right now, it's too early to call that it has entered the accumulation cycle, okay? Now, let's get to the daily chart. Here, that's the box we've drawn last week, assuming it is going through an uptrend after this massive drop, as well as the next day, the massive recovery. Assuming this trend is going to hold true and continue, there are a couple of dates, not these dates anymore. I talked about those two levels, 74K and 80K, right? So if I extend the box, so the bottom crosses the 80,500. There are 3 dates at least. So one is where the bottom of the channel crosses the white. This is you can call it still the resistant line over here by looking at the daily prices. It's basically the long-term playground of Bitcoin. Okay, this white text in the long-term playground. It basically tracks the price of Bitcoin since 2017 all the way till now, assuming there's inflation factor that's pushing the price bit of Bitcoin continuing going upwards. Okay, except those blow-off tops. Now, if this continues, it's going to cross this point, but that's like the price if it stays at around the current level range bound between the green key level of 68K and this white line over here. That date points to 16th of June. Yes, it's very far down the line. It doesn't have to wait till then to break above or below. But if nothing surprising happens, it continues to trade sideways. That's when it will eventually get to the tip of this wedge. All right, the next cross with the 74K line is 28th of June. So same month, in the middle of the year. What would happen when the price trades sideways and gets to the tip of this either triangle or the wedge? There are only 2 options for the bulls and bears, all right, for the price. Either it breaks this 74K level, or it has to fall outside of the upward trend, which means either it continues sideways or it's going to drop further. Okay, so the uptrend finishes, basically, in simple terms, if it doesn't break any of those resistance level by the end of June. Okay, so those are the 2 key dates. However, if you say it seems like the price is going to break the 74K, given it stayed there for, closed above that line for 1 day on Monday, and then immediately retreat. If given that kind of positivity, that it goes above the 74K and comes up along the channel to challenge the 80,500, that will lead us to another date that's potentially in, September. That's hopefully 3rd of September. That's when the price gets into another window, you can say, another tip of a triangle, that it has to make that decision one more time. It's possible, but as I mentioned in previous sessions, given all the macroeconomic backdrop and private credit crisis, whatever you heard from the news, market sentiments aren't just supporting that kind of risk-on mode. Unless people are speculating global or central banks around the globe is going to print a lot of money, then it's going to jack the price up. Okay, so that's Bitcoin, and next is Ethereum. For Ethereum, we see this price coming back down that I said potentially, or it looks to me, Ethereum has gone into the accumulation cycle earlier than Bitcoin. The pattern looks very similar, right? With those long red candles and one long red candle with a long wick from the bottom. And then it stabilizes for a few weeks and a week up. And this, try breaking a higher resistance for the case of Ethereum is 2,330, this red key level. But then got the bears hammer down back to the lower level. So the story looks almost exactly the same as Bitcoin. If you say, hey, if this is not the actual panic over stage, right? If it is only the final period of silence before the market drops to its absolute low, that can happen. That's possible. But looking at the level of Ethereum, unless you assume that Ethereum is not going through the same long-term trajectory with inflation factored in. So meaning, instead of trending upwards along with time since 2017, like Bitcoin, Ethereum is going through a flat sideways. If you believe in that, you can argue that may be true because the peak or the high that we have during the 2025 cycle is not that far from the 2021. So some can argue that Ethereum may be trading flat instead of trending upwards. That's possible. Okay, assuming that's the case, if it is trading flat, then the 2022 bottom may have a chance to be the actual low of the panic over stage for this cycle as well. So this is not, as I explained many times, even if we see a panic over stage, the subsequent test for the whales to check out the paper hands and keeping only the diamond hands, let me copy the tag over there. Okay, back to Ethereum, it's the same. The whales are just going to keep shaking the price up and down during the accumulation cycle, sometimes even deeper than the initial low. Okay, sometimes it can go very deep. If that's the case, then this 810, this blue key level, would be the low if it matches that one in 2022. Not that I'm seeing the case as of this moment, but if you look at this, when the price dropped from in 2022 April all the way into mid-May, it took a pause, again with a very long wave. Strong buying from the green key level of around 1700, and then it struggled for 5 more weeks before it bottoms out. Okay, likewise, around the same level, 1700, a long way from the bottom. Okay, let me close this. Long way from the bottom after the big drop, long way from the bottom after the big drop, left and right. Okay, very similar. And then kind of stabilizes for a few weeks. It depends on whether the next few weeks we'll see similar drop. And then again, long way from the bottom, meaning some whales got in and bought the dip. Then it stabilizes and gives us that automatic rally. So the AR is the automatic rally that sets the trading range top. Okay, that's a possibility how things would play out for Ethereum from the bigger picture perspective. However, if you say, no way, it should be this yellow box that Ethereum is trending upwards long-term, even the bottom, then it is very close. All right, along with the timeline, the bottom is sitting somewhere between the 1500 to 1700. If it drags on longer, getting closer to maybe money printing, then the base price would get even higher. That's a lot of assumption behind it. Okay, it's not a certainty, but if those conditions show up, that's a possibility for Ethereum. Now, daily chart, we talked about the uptrend, and we say, okay, if Ethereum is going to stay above this uptrend, then there's a possibility when we get closer to the end of March, we will see a break, see the price break outside of the downtrend that started back in August last year. However, what happened in the past 2 days confirmed that uptrend, that momentum is lost. So this line doesn't provide any support anymore. However, how about a slightly more mild trajectory? Assuming if we line up the tip of these waves, okay, it still hasn't fallen outside of this uptrend that started since 24th of February. Okay, it's still bouncing along. It may drop below the 2,135, the purple key level. Okay, you see that's why this is the key level now, right? When the price dropped, you see buying, and for yesterday, it's kept staying above the line. So assuming it's continuing this trend, then eventually it will get to a point around April 10th, all right, that it gets to the tip of the wedge. And again, same thing, just two options for the bulls and bears to decide. Break above or break outside of the downtrend, or break below and re-challenge the purple key level in this case, if it's this wedge. However, it's also possible for it to get to challenge the red key level one more time earlier and challenge this dual resistance over here, where the red line crosses the ceiling of the downtrend resistance, or the downtrend channel ceiling. That's around the 5th of April. And just within a week's time, there are two windows. If you say, I'm more bullish about it, and it's going to go up in the next few days above the 2,330, going to challenge the 2,500, that's going to be a very stretched scenario, given there are 2 days left before it has to break outside of the channel ceiling in order to further challenge the 2,500, because that date is actually pointing to the 23rd of March. So just 1 to 2 days, depending on where on the earth you're sitting. Okay. So multiple windows. Let me update this as well. If the price continues just to trade sideways, that's pointing towards the 19th of April. Yeah, I've adjusted the channel box so some of these dates slightly moved by a few days. So this is talking about if the price continue to trade sideways, just staying above the purple key level and edging towards this tip, then sometime around late April, there will be another window. If it ever drops back to the previous range bound zone between 1950 to the purple key level, okay, the blue key level to the purple key level, then it's going to get into May before another window comes for whoever that's in the game to confirm whether the downtrend is finally over. Of course, the pessimistic case where it comes back to challenge the 1800 will lead us into mid-May before that confirmation windows come in. Because some people, I guess, they left a comment in some of the videos. They might have misunderstood when I said breakout. It's not like you have a consolidation period and then breakout. I'm not mentioning about that scenario. I'm mentioning about if it's from a downtrend. When they break outside of the downtrend, the price either continue to trade sideways or it's going to go upwards. It's one of those two options. And then if it trades sideways, if any of the macro news is pushing the sentiment towards the south side, meaning people aren't going to get risk on, they're going to get more risk off, then after that sideways period, the price can develop into a new downtrend. So I guess there's some confusion when people first come to my TA, and they might have some perception that it's similar to whatever TA they have come across before and is interpreted what I've said. Now, the third one, Bitcoin Cash. Here, we see a slightly better scenario, but the thing is, we don't see the red candlestick with a long wick from the bottom. That's very different from when it happened back in February 2025, when Bitcoin Cash quickly get to the panic over stage, reaccumulate, or basically went through a very quick accumulation period of, let's say that's 14 weeks roughly before it gets to the platform stage, and then launch the bioclimax as well as subsequent upwards of the distribution. Currently, it looks to me it is still at this point where the lower level sign of weakness has been confirmed. So as in the case back in December 2024, it went to this orange key level of 427. It's still range bound currently between that orange key level and the yellow key level of 482. It looks almost the same what it did in December 2024 all the way into late January 2025. If crypto market is going to further adjust, then especially Bitcoin is going to get into accumulation cycle, and Bitcoin Cash closely follow, then that's when we would see the whale spy period. This is called preliminary support. It's not panic sell. It's just coincidence that it's still it's like PS. That's the big picture. I'm not going to repeat because it's kind of similar to what Bitcoin is. It's somewhere between transiting between the distribution cycle and the accumulation cycle. Key support resistance we talked about, and then let's go to the daily. Here, after exiting the downtrend back in mid-Feb, it traded sideways. Okay, like I explained just now in the Ethereum chart, and then it dropped drastically when somewhere close to the Middle East war again. It's a few days before that. And then it started a downtrend, found support from the orange level, and then trading sideways. And last week we have drawn this channel. I said somewhere before March 23rd, we'll get an answer whether this is really an uptrend that's going to lead the price to the 540 level, once again challenging that. And indeed, on Wednesday, the confirmation came in and continued to stay below this support line that was supporting the price for about 10 days since March the 8th, all the way to the 11th. So you can say is at best trading sideways for Bitcoin Cash between the orange key level and the yellow key level, 427 to 482, like I said in the very beginning. So these are not useful for now, at least for the date over here. And we can continue to test it because some people, when looking at the chart, would argue, okay, it hasn't, this run, the bulls wasn't successful in breaking the 482 key level. But still, we are seeing higher lows. Okay, I take that. It's true, but looking at the chart. So what we can do is, what if the uptrend is just narrower range and more mild in terms of the rate of ascent? The picture we can get, or the point we can get to, is very far down the line, similar to what we measured just now. It is pointing towards early May. Coincidence? New Fed chair? Okay, kind of interesting. If it really happens that way, and then nothing new comes out, not printing money, interest rates staying high, then that's when the price is going to fall outside of this the ascending or upward channel. Okay, so range bound between orange and yellow key level is still the base case, assuming it's still trying to break above and staying above this ascending support. Then sooner or later in the next few weeks, we'll see the price come to re-challenge these two lines again. Okay, they're going to test the support and then test this resistance. So that's for Bitcoin Cash. Remember to like this video, and if you want to access this video 2 days earlier, join the other members now. So Substack, if you haven't subscribed, this dashboard will definitely help you, and I'll let them stay free for the next few weeks. Okay, so go check it out. I'll post it right after these sessions today. See you in the next session.